Well, this week, our series about Kansas City fountains resumes as producer-videographer Dave Burkhart takes a trip to Mission Hills,
where Octarium director and KCPT contributor Krista Blackwood gives us the scoop on her favorite fountain.
It's called Swan Fountain. I discovered it in the early 2000s when I was in this neighborhood to deliver a CD of a church service to a congregant. And I saw this and I stopped. And I spent an hour here just sitting here imagining what could be possible in ancient times. I am a leader of a group of 8 singers. There are 8 pillars, and that seemed like kismet to me. It's the whole space, and it's how they've set up these stairs as if they're expecting a performance here, as if they're expecting something to happen here. I imagine a procession. I imagine, and a larger choir than my 8, a 60-voice choir up there doing something beautiful with chairs filling this whole grass area. I would love to have a concert here and place the singers on these steps. If I was going to program music for the space, I think I'd program nature music. There's music about swans, there's music about wind, there's music about water, there's echo music. And I think if you put people in a space like this and program music about the space they're in, it makes it a really formative and complete artistic experience. I use swans a lot when I'm working with choirs because they're these graceful creatures above the water. They just glide like choral music sounds. But under the water, they're working like heck. They're kicking those little feet. And that's, choral music and singing is like that. You need to sound and look graceful, but underneath you're working really hard in the air you're creating and the support you're creating. So I use swans. Often I use ducks, but swans are more elegant. It's almost like an organized performance space, like somebody painted a backdrop and we're going to put on a Greek tragedy here, Antigone or something. The water feature portion of it is not as important to me as the whole piece of it, which is, I think, why I like it so much. The fountain is not the central portion. It is a part of the whole ambiance.
We had to catch Krista quickly for that. She and her family leave at the end of June for a new job in Morocco.
I hear she has reserved the right to choose her own favorite fountain over there as well. Best of luck, Dr. Blackwood.